back to Resilience. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Mike Tinmouth. He's the COO and co-founder of Acua Ocean, which is a full ocean monitoring company, which sounds like something that we could probably use right now, given the fact that our air and land is pretty much, it feels like it's covered, but it sounds like you guys are doing something amazing out in the high seas.
Thanks, John. Yeah, we founded Acua in 2021, really sort of understanding the challenges, not just in the sort of nearshore and littoral space, but actually in the full open ocean conditions. And so with our knowledge of ocean robotics, we decided that this was going to be a real sort of interesting niche. We didn't expect it to come quite as quickly as it has, but this is really going to be the next battle space and theater of operations.
So you guys started 2021. Did you start as a military mission, or was it, I guess, purely just for monitoring?
We've always seen ourselves as being dual use. So even back in 21, before the start of the Ukraine conflict, we were looking at things like subsea data cable protection, pipelines, and the likes as well. And a lot of people were going, well, yeah, possibly, maybe, it's not really an issue. So the focus at that stage was more around sort of monitoring these cables from a maintenance perspective, trying to ensure sort of increased sort of longevity, decreased maintenance cycles and the likes as well. And it was then with Ukraine and the Nord Stream incident that suddenly all things critical underwater infrastructure came to the fore. But we're very much a dual use tech, and were from the outset.
So tell me how this works. I mean, obviously the ocean's fairly broad and fairly deep. So how do you I don't know, manage it?
So from our side, we really understood the limiting sort of factors and the sort of the real sort of operational requirements necessary. So we decided if you're going to build an ocean drone, it needs to start off with the fundamental understanding that the ocean is a big, complex, difficult environment to operate in. So from the outset, we went niche. We went down the route of a very stable, slow and persistent platform that was capable in higher sea states. So the market around fast-moving one-way effector USVs is completely saturated. There are dozens and dozens of these operating everywhere from the Black Sea and growing elsewhere. But what there was really a dearth of was those vessels that could be out in the North Atlantic for extended periods of time, bring that monitoring, that surveillance capability at scale.
So what does that mean in terms of craft design? It sounds like you have something that can't flip over, all that other good stuff.
Yeah. So we basically thought, if it's a robot, why does it need to, if it's a robot boat, why does it need to look like every other boat out there? So we moved away from a traditional monohull and we went for what's called a swath vessel. So a small waterplane area twin hull. Intrinsically an incredibly stable design, looks a little bit like a cat, merged enemy hulls that sort of make it very super stable. So our 14-meter drone ship performs to the same sort of stability calculations as a 45-meter plus vessel. So all of it from the outset was, rather than building a boat like all the others, let's focus on what it's really, really good at and make it stable as possible.
So that means it's a broader, sort of like a broader platform, that sort of thing, and
so
just to keep it
14.2 meters by 9 meters, so very sort of almost square in many regards, designed to ride the waves like a cork. The other thing we knew was that for most of the missions, whether it was commercial offshore or whether it was defense and security, what we wanted to do was be able to deploy other payloads. So when you're deploying payloads off a monohull vessel, you're either going off the sides or you're going off the stern. That immediately creates a lever arm effect and adds to the instability. So it makes it very, very difficult to put things in the water or take it out of the water in higher sea states. So by moving towards the swath vessel, what we've been able to do is not only make an intrinsically very stable platform, rides the wave like a cork, we've also built it around a moon pool. So when we're deploying payloads, we're going straight down vertically through the center of gravity if we're deploying subsurface, and that could be the launch and recovery of ROVs, AUVs, sonar float systems and the likes. Or it means we can re-roll from our moon pole, we can re-roll it to put in surface-based sensoring systems, or in fact systems like aerial drones or counter UAS systems as well.
So this guy basically, it goes into open water. You're doing infrastructure monitoring. You're also doing submarine detection. Is there any intention of putting a weapon on these things, or is it mostly just for detection?
So I would say sort of initially at the moment, a big market in counter UAS. The UK being an island, a really, really useful way of protecting UK or even sort of vast tracts of Western Europe, is to be able to forward deploy systems out at sea. So actually that early interceptor, so that could be kinetic weaponry, it could be early detection systems and the likes, but having those out further offshore is a really, really useful use case. And I think we've seen lessons being learned here from Israel, where when the Iron Dome has been sort of intercepting a lot of inbound Iranian and other sort of militant ordnance, actually a lot of the risk for Israeli citizens has been in terms of the intercepted, the debris that comes from interceptions. So not only do you get the early warning detection, and there is a huge amount of critical offshore infrastructure, wind farms, oil, gas, and the likes offshore, but you also get the ability to react further offshore, sort of give you more time, but also not over hugely densely populated urban centres, ports and coastal cities and the likes as well.
Everyone's talking about aerial drones. Why focus on the sea?
So I think, firstly, the aerial drone market, there are a lot of people doing really awesome stuff. It is it's a saturated market. We really see the opportunities of all things moving towards areas of more sort of stealth, more subversive types of engagement. We saw before a lot of people did the risks around critical infrastructure. If you want to cause economic damage in Western Europe, you take out a pipeline and suddenly, consumer gas prices go up 400% overnight. We know here in the UK, 95% of financial transactions still are processed via subsea data cables. That is our main source of connectivity. So if you want to cause real disruption to the operations of Western Europe and most of our allied nations, you take out infrastructure at sea. And we see, whether it's the UK, whether it's Western Europe, whether it's Taiwan, a lot of the potential areas of future conflict are going to be not only at sea, but also in areas with higher sea states as well.
How many of these are floating around right now?
So we launched Pioneer, our prototype demonstrator vessel, in 2024. She has now been at sea we've had her on the water for 7,500 hours. We've completed 42 days of at-sea operations. She is now being followed by our Mark II vessel. So we're taking all the lessons learned from that vessel and we'll be scaling out. So Mark II vessel will follow at the back end of 2026, and then we're going to build out to scale production. One of the great things with USV technology is the ability to move away from traditional shipbuilding. So rather than building one vessel at a time, we want to move towards a world where these are productionized the same as you would in the automotive or the aerospace industry, and actually build these at scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. You don't have to, since there's nobody on it, it doesn't have to, you don't have to 15 layers of lacquer to make it look really, really nice. You just have to make sure that it doesn't flip over, I suppose.
Precisely that. You can focus on the fundamentals of what makes a good robot rather than what makes a comfortable vessel. You can rethink the way that the vessel's laid out, the systems architecture. All of that is not encumbered by thinking about, we need passageways and bunks and toilets and galleys and the likes as well. You can build it to be a very, very capable robot first and foremost. And that's kind of been part of our secret sauce. Back in August last year, we became the first vessel, USV, to receive UK Maritime Coast Guard Agency regulatory approvals under the Workboat Code 3. That's critical to operating in the offshore commercial space. But more than what it sort of did, more than anything else, was it was actually a tick mark to say that actually from that robustness, the reliability, the resilience of our systems, we'd actually designed that first and foremost, from the ground up. We'd thought about what does the engineering mean to make sure this is able to operate out at sea in those higher sea states, in those more extreme conditions.
Do unmanned devices like this, do unmanned crafts like this become more prevalent than human run?
Very soon. I think we're reaching an inflection point. So the phenomenal thing with robots is they're very, very good at doing the dull, dangerous and dirty jobs. Nobody wants to know, even the most sort of adventurous sort of young person joining the marine sector, the maritime sector, they don't want to be out at sea and sea state horrendous. They don't want to be out at sea on kids' birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas Day and the likes as well. Whereas robotic systems are very, very good and capable. What it also means is for a lot of the operations in the offshore commercial sector and the likes, you're really limited by weather windows. And, anyone living in Western Europe will know weather is not one of our strong points. So if you're operating in the North Sea and you're only limited to 120 days of operation a year, that's really challenging from a cost perspective. Whereas the robotic system doesn't have to comply with labor laws. Human safety is not a factor. So we want to move away from operations that would typically cap out at about 2-meter wave height and be able to move into the 4.5-meter wave height for commercial operations. That's also critical from a defense perspective, because when conflict comes, and it is coming en masse, it's not going to be limited by the weather. If China is tying up a potential future conflict with Taiwan, they're going to wait for the most adverse weather conditions in order to launch any type of conflict. So we want to have a system that is robust and ready to operate in higher sea states, not just when it's glassy flat in the middle of an English summer.
When it comes to dual use, does this ever become like a shipping?
So there are really interesting use cases around contested logistics and being able to forward deploy kit and equipment. There are strong use cases, humanitarian use cases around resupply, inter-island supplies, humanitarian relief and the likes as well. I think on vessels of our size and even those slightly larger, there are a number of American competitors who are building vessels with 80-ton payloads. It's still too small to move into the world of short sea shipping, but it's a track in the right direction. And there's no doubt that autonomy more broadly is going to, there'll be a world in which within the next 20, 30 years, we're looking at larger, container ships and the likes as well, also moving towards either autonomous or certainly increasingly minimally crewed solution. But in our instance, there are no human beings on board.
So the website is ocean.tech. When are we going to see these things in general population?
So anyone who lives in Plymouth will have seen Pioneer out on the water over the last sort of 6-7 months. She's been not only completing sea trials inside the Sound, but also increasingly outside in open ocean conditions. So many a local will have seen it and wondered what on earth it is. Very unique looking. We are, as I said, in build now for Mark II, being built on the Isle of Wight in the UK. We are in conversations across Europe and a number of our sort of friendly allied nations around what deploying Pioneer class solutions out in other theatres will start to look like. So our vision is to scale these into production level capacity from 2027, with certainly 2 vessels following this year.
All right, very cool. Mike, thank you for joining us. This has been it's been a really nice diversion from the drone wars.
Fantastic, John. Really appreciate the time and questions. Good fun as always, and look forward to staying in touch and listening in.
All right, this has been Resilience. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next time.
All the best.